sorry about the interruption, but Gwendolyn, please, the stage is yours.
Oh, already? All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, as you take your presentation, I want to just make one note. So Gwendolyn is having a workshop in person in Helsinki on the 4th of October. And we want to encourage people to join us that day. So everybody, I will send you a link after this meeting to join the workshop. And also because we want to have this as an interactive session, so we are going to have a lottery of all the persons who send us in chat some questions for Gwendolyn. We are having a lottery, and the winner will be getting a free place on that workshop on 4th of October. So I really welcome all the questions to chat, and also the questions sent to me in email. They are also within that lottery. So now go ahead, Gwendolyn.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. I'm on speaker view, but I'm still seeing you, and I'm speaking as much as I can. What am I doing wrong? Well, anyway, you have me. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that you're recording it at the other end and that my screen will show. Yeah? Okay, good.
We don't see your screen.
Your presentation.
I haven't come. I just want to see me first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all right. You don't have to. Do you see me? Do you
Yes.
see me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Very good. Thanks. So, yes, my name is Gwendolyn Galsworth, and I am happy to welcome so many of you back. I recognize your names or your faces. Thank you for following us in this series. This is a 3-part series that is not exactly a preview of the workshop. In a moment, I will specify what the workshop is going to be about. It will have a lot more detail, and it will be an introduction to visuality, but a deep introduction. But these 3 workshops are highlighting pieces that I have identified as very important, and including this one today. Today, it's called The Start That Stops Us, but I have a few things to say before we begin that content. So let me see if I can get to my right screen. I think this is it. And turn this on. Thank you.
Yes.
And turn that on. Thank you. All right, thank you. So it's the start that stops us. But first, I want to give you a sense of, this is only 4 or 5 slides, of the October workshop, so that you understand. Its title is Workplace Visuality. You can't get to excellence without it. And it makes that point. It shows you how it works, and why it is so important to pair this with your other improvement initiatives. It goes into the telling detail, the mechanisms of thinking visually, and also of creating a visually functional enterprise, work area, company. I present the agenda in this way, in these 7 tiles. The anchor tile is visuality is a language. If you think of it as devices, you're missing about 90% of its functionality. It actually connects and aligns the organization through a series of visual devices that are invented by your company. You may be inspired by the devices that you see in other companies. That we present about 200 or 300 during the workshop. We examine about 20 of them, 30 of them in enough detail for you to see how that works. But that's the cornerstone, that we're creating an operational language, and it lives in the detail of the device. We'll be talking about visuality and brain function. We will be talking about the anchor dynamic, which is I-driven, which is the role of the individual coming to the forefront. We will step through the 10 doorways, doorway by doorway, so you can see the functionality of categories of people, departments, organizational functions and what kind of devices they will typically create and what kind of devices they're responsible for in terms of installing that language. This is all part of it. We will have time to absorb, reflect, and digest. I want that very much. So do you. We'll look at the financial and the cultural results, which are impressive. We always see a 15% increase in productivity. This is including in the offices, often 30% and often beyond, very specific to the devices. And we'll do a case study. So it's going to be a very rich session. We really want you to come. This is my first time in Finland. This is my first time in Scandinavia. We hope you join us to learn what we mean by a workplace that speaks. Okay? It's on October 4th. And this is a summation of the intent. Imagine if the answers to all the questions in your company, those operational questions, who, what, when, how many, and where, were visually embedded into the living landscape of work. Imagine if the answers were there to those operational questions. What would you do with all that liberated time? What would your company do? What would you become? What would your company become? That is the transformational factor of workplace visuality. Okay, and here's a bunch of devices in action. We will examine a number of these during the workshop. Okay, so let us begin with our topic of today, startup. It's the start that stops us. I want to talk about your improvement infrastructure. Why is it that getting improvement going and growing is so tricky? Why do companies so often bail, especially in the early stages? It's not worth it. Nothing's happening. Why is this not working? What are we doing wrong? They bail long before they've had time to actually fail. Failure looks very different than bailing. Why is it that the start stops us? If you already know the answer, then another improvement initiative will only strengthen you. But if you're a newcomer to the idea that you can actually be transformatively successful with improvement initiatives, you may take a nosedive if you don't work on your infrastructure while you're working on putting the methods in place, okay? Understanding what to do is only half the battle. The other half is how. How do you put the what in place? And then how do you do it? Okay? So here's a definition of infrastructure. Oh, and by the way, I want to say, please send your questions in all along the way, because I'll be moving through 3 important tools, and you may have questions right now. Just put them in the chat box. Not only do you get a chance to win a seat, but you can then free up your thinking to consider what comes next, okay? So like airplanes on the runway, let them take off and go into the chat box. So an infrastructure in city architecture, for example, is a framework or a set of interconnected elements that enable and support the larger structure. A framework of the internal systems for a town or a city, for example, the roads, the water supplies, the sewers, the electrical grids, the phone and internet and cable connections. These are all indispensable to the life of the city, and yet they are mostly invisible. We take them for granted. They are so seamlessly there. That's the way your infrastructure will be, but if you take them away, the city stops. The bus system is another totally important part of the infrastructure to keep the citizens connected, safe, so they can get where they're going on time, so they can have a meaningful, contributing life in that locale. The infrastructure of a building is the same way. It's invisible. We don't see the I-beams. We don't see the plumbing, except when it breaks, okay? But it's there, and it has to be there. It keeps the building standing. It gives us the stairs and the elevators. It's indispensable for the function of the building, the purpose of the building to be fulfilled. The infrastructure is there. You can think of it sort of like the skeleton and the nervous system in our body. We aren't aware of it, but we're using it all the time. So, core requirements of your improvement infrastructure. I set up 7. I acquaint my clients with 7, and we begin to put them in place right away. By right away, I mean a month before startup, before we launch the training. And here are the 7. Vision place. And I'm only going to go through 3 of these. If you want to back up, we have time at the end, and you want to ask about one of these, of course, we'll see what we can explore in the time that's left. A baseline set of metrics, so we have a foundational start point. A systematic methodology, robust training materials, these are fundamental. Supplies, the visual workplace is a physical workplace. We are always turning into a physical form our inventiveness, even on the executive level. A visual blitz, some way for people to come together and actually work on converting their area, their office, their desk, or for a senior executive, their thinking into form, something that is scheduled. On-site leadership, we'll be looking at that one today. The laminated map, we'll be using that one today. Hit list and improvement time. So these 7, and if you look at it, there's really like 9 up there, squeezed in. We're going to be looking at these 3, okay? We'll start with systematic methodology. A systematic methodology. Here's a fact. There is almost a casual selection that I've observed when choosing an improvement methodology. Oh, let's find out about problem solving. Oh, let's put some visual devices in place. Oh, let's improve our quality. Let's look for a method and bring it in. In my model, and I want to say this declaratively, the decision about the methodology has to come from the executive, the ranking side executive. If I have a middle manager who wants me to come in, I will say to him, I'm flattered. I would love to come in and work with you. I need to meet your boss's boss's boss. And we need to have a conversation because I need to tell that person, and she needs to decide if the resources are appropriate, if the resources are aligned, if the outcomes are aligned, and if you're willing to go the distance and get the result. Because if those things aren't in place, then we're not going to have a happy journey together. It'll be full of unpleasant surprises. So let's just kind of get our house in order. Most people, when they choose an approach, an initiative, they will look at the what. They will want that what. They will want that task, that outcome, that know what, that know why, that content, a method that will deliver that content. But they're looking at the horizon, and we have to look below the horizon to find out how to make that go. The what is above, it's kind of like the sexy part. It's the part that I want. Oh, wow, that's beautiful. I want one like that. Bring it into the company. But the how is a test of your current tribal conditions, the current state of your culture, and also your ability to change. In my experience, I have found that change cannot happen without an intentional infrastructure being put into place. You can start the discussions about the proposal and about the contract beforehand, about the what. But if you're with a wise consultant practitioner, that person will say to you, let's talk about the how. Let me give you an assessment of currently what your capability is. And I say this, the purpose of my methodology is to grow that capability. So we're not going to skirt around it. We're not going to jump over it. We're going to adopt it as an outcome. When you leave us, you will have a functioning operational excellence system. You will have a system, not just a person in place who is organizing the logistics and the schedule, but someone who is aligned with the objectives that you want to meet and has some, maybe not all, but some methodologies to accomplish that. You will have a structure in place. If we continue, it'll get stronger. If we don't continue, you will know how to make it stronger yourself. That is a promise. So the underneath the horizon is process oriented. It is the know-how. It is the deployment method. And I know I can feel it from here, right here where I am in Warsaw, and right there wherever you are in the US or Finland or anywhere, that you know what I mean. Why fail because there's a missing piece? Why not start and put that piece in place right away? As part of the methodology. There's so many things to say about this, but I've hit some highlights for today, and I hope it'll be useful for you. Another way to look at how to create deployment success is to make this differentiation. And I find this very useful. I created this, I don't know how many decades ago. This is your conversion pathway, a straight line, boom. You think you know how to get there. And you're now going to put into place just two of the elements that are important. You're going to put a methodology, that's your conversion pathway. You're going to put a methodology in place, and that methodology will change the operational landscape, but you will also simultaneously deal with the inventiveness that in many, many employees lies dormant. An inventiveness that is there wanting to contribute, but not yet activated. And we call that the cultural impact. You can't have a cultural change if you don't widen the doorway, open the doorway, and allow people to contribute. It isn't just engagement, it's the contribution. It is seeing the creations that come out of my head, my heart, my will, living and contributing there in the workplace. And I'm talking about supervisors as well. Of course, we think about operators. We always begin with operators because that is where that power is the most dormant. We haven't cultivated it. We haven't ignited it. We don't know how to use it. It scares us. People push back. They're rude sometimes, or they say, I got this line today, you don't pay me for thinking. Just let me do my work. Sound familiar? It's all right. It's just normal. But let's look on this side of the methodology and look at what happens to that conversion pathway when we bring in a methodology. This is what it looks like. I'm sorry, I'm going to define what I mean by methodology. A systematic application, a standard operating procedure, very knowable step-by-step plan, a step-by-step method, a proven task protocol, a content recipe. So you have a method. But look at the learning curve. There's the learning curve. It's not a conversion curve until we learn how to do it. And the learning curve is so interesting because it wiggles and waggles. And you have to stay steady, knowing, it's wiggling and it's waggling, but it's going in the right direction. By gum, we're making progress. And let's look at this a little bit more closely. Hopefully you can see my pointer. You begin and you start, I'm down here at the bottom. You get ready to do something that has to do with the method and you do it. But then you're going off in the wrong direction and you notice it and then you say, oops, okay, let me find my way back. Okay, something else happened. And then I made another kind of detour or mistake, we would call it. Not a failure, just learning. And then I got something done. We got something done together. We're making progress and it happened, but I noticed it more quickly because I'm being guided by principles and concepts. I noticed it. I'm getting feedback. And look at, even though we're still making some errors of implementation, look how the line, our path, is beginning to hug the conversion curve. We're still learning even up here, but we're closer and closer to getting things done efficiently and effectively, just the way the method promised. The learning curve is a part of the implementation, and it is exactly the same way, perhaps even more extreme, with inventiveness, with the cultural piece, which is scary because nobody likes unpleasantness, and it feels unpleasant sometimes in some countries if we're not happy. United States of America is not a happy place. We don't do happy.
Join the meeting.
Not anymore. Welcome, whoever you are. Inventiveness has to do with ideas and intuition. It has to do with innovation and inspiration. Who can name it? Imagination, creativity, research sometimes, trial and error, experimentation. That's what inventiveness is. It's all of those things. And you know, the learning curve is, there it is. It's not a straight line. It's us learning how to first stimulate and activate those ideas, and then in many companies, how to deal with the flood of them. This is what we experience all the time. I've just been invited to help a company here in Poland, and I've been after this company for, 9-10 months, because its need is so clear to me, and there's enough strength in the organization. And my worst nightmare is that they won't understand the idea of putting an infrastructure in place. And if there's no infrastructure, I can't do my work. And I'm really good at what I do, but I need an infrastructure as well. How else am I going to teach the company what I know if there isn't a structure in place to absorb that? And I say to my clients, I'm responsible for your first cycle of success. I'll make it happen in your company. You're responsible for the second one, but I'll stick with you. The third one, you're on your own. Send me a letter if you need some help. I'm going to teach you everything. But look at this. This is what I face as well. I hit some kind of a political block or operational block or a production schedule block. All of a sudden, people can't come to the training. What are you talking about? That was our agreement. Or different people come. Oh my goodness. And we got to sort that out. And then we find our way back. We find our way back. We find our way back. We progress. This is as close to reality as anything that I experience. It's always forward, but there are detours, and we have to keep the faith. We have to be prepared for those detours, and that's what the infrastructure is about. The infrastructure is there to catch our wiggles, and despite that, we get something done. Those little crosses are when we get something done. We really are making concrete steps. So it's a hopeful progression, but you have to know from the beginning, it is going to be challenging. It will challenge the tribe. You are not yet an enterprise. You are a series of tribal states, villages perhaps. So that's another way to look at the deployment process and what success means. Be encouraged by it, because all of that is about learning, and you want your organization to learn. Okay? How to make results sustainable. The key is right there. So let's look at, so that's what I want to say about a systematic methodology. It really needs to be solid. It needs to be a proven method. It needs to have coherent steps. And, I want to say one other thing. In the 1980s, God help us, in the 1980s, I did a lot of 5S. It came over from Japan. And darn it, if I wasn't there, it would never roll over to the next cycle. And I noticed that. I noticed that we would have a good first cycle if I was there. We would not have a good second cycle unless I was there. And I said to myself, something is wrong. I remember I reported this to my boss, Norman Bodak, who started a very important organization in the 1980s that brought all of the wealth of knowledge from Japan. He used to come back from Japan with suitcases. He'd put them on the boardroom table, and he would say to us, a very small group, 6 or 7 people to begin with, he said, pick a book, any book, I'll get it translated. Because it was such a wealth. And each book cost $100,000 to get translated in 1985, 86, because we had to translate it into understandable English, which was a new criteria for Japanese translations. But it was a wealth of knowledge. And, excuse me, I'm losing my way here. Let me just figure out. I think I probably lost the point that I was driving at. I kept failing at 5S. And I went to Norman and I said, Norman, I don't sell me anymore. I got to figure this out. It's not working. It's not good enough. We aren't Japanese, and I have evidence of it now. And he let me do a little bit of experimentation, but at some point I had to give my notice and start my own company. And that's when I really got into Visuality and began to understand the mechanisms of deployment. That's what I'm sharing with you now. So the method really matters, and your methodology needs to have a built-in mechanism for rolling over. The mechanism is called two things: accountability and ownership. It has to have accountability, and there has to be a mechanism for the people who are doing it to own it. And by the way, if you've come to the other webinars, that is the power of the I-driven. It's incredibly reliable. People want it. They want it. They'll protect it. They'll advocate for it. Whether they're an executive, I've seen executives go to bat. I've seen operators go to bat. They'll go into the executive's room and they said, finally, you're doing something for me. You better keep doing it too, because I want to do more. I want to learn more. I want to be more. But that's a different discussion. We had that discussion already. Let's look at on-site leadership. This is something very specific that's part of the infrastructure. You coming up with some questions? Should I give you a little break? Take a moment, write a question? I think I'll just wait a moment. You digest that, what we just did. This stuff here. Go ahead, write a question about it. I'd like to see you at the workshop. It's a raffle, you know. Okay. Yeah.
Gwendolyn, there's a couple of questions earlier. Do you want to take them now, or?
Yeah. Well, let's do that. We have time.
Yes. Okay.
Please, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, I can read from here.
Please.
Carolyn sent a message. Gwendolyn, how much time does Visuality typically save an individual?
How much time? Okay, name the individual. What do you have in mind? You have something specific in mind, Carolyn?
So if you hi Gwendolyn.
Hi there.
If you convert an organization over into a visual workplace, and you have individuals who typically in the past haven't worked visually, how much time does it save them to have that visual workplace?
I got you. You're talking about lead time.
Yeah, I'm talking about
lead time. Yeah, sure.
Or it's just freedom to open up capacity on their calendar. So
I'll give you some numbers. A bunch of engineers in Australia, they attack their information deficits. They call them interruptions. One thing you don't want to do in an engineering department is interrupt engineers, but if they've sent you a bad spec, you know, or if they're publishing, as happened with one of my clients, 78 ECNs per month, you're knocking at their door, interrupting them, right? And so their metric was, we are going from 35 interruptions a day, and we want it at 5. And they got that. How much time did it save? All of that time.
Sure.
And the other, just a research point on that. Research has told us that when we're interrupted, when we interrupt someone, however long, however short, it takes 10 to 12 minutes to recover, not to get back to work, but to recover, you know this, to recover that degree of concentration. You know, it's incalculable. So you not only get effectiveness, but you get the disappearance of a really wasted time. We call it motion and visuality, and it's monumental. I mean, it's the same way with an executive. I know our reference point is frequently operators, and operators is very distinguishable because you will have on-time delivery. I'm embarrassed to say, because I don't want to implicate my clients, but I started working with one client who had 47% on-time delivery. And it took us 2.5 years, but they got to 99, and the plant manager said, if we get to 100% on-time delivery, 7 plots in a row, that means 7 intervals in a row, I'll shave my head. Everybody was excited. That was real motivation. So did I answer your question?
You did.
Is that good enough? Okay, good, thanks.
Yes.
We'll take another one, please.
Yeah, Gwendolyn, there's another question from Reera.
Thank you.
What are the key challenges in setting up the infrastructure for improvement?
Yes, that's a global question. And I will say, I don't want to appear cavalier about this, casual, but when you are working with an external firm that is guaranteeing your results, they are responsible for setting up the infrastructure and dealing with the first wave of resistance, be it political, be it personal, be it schedule bound or whatever. So again, I don't want to sound casual about it, but pick your firms well, because they're responsible for figuring it out. They should have done an assessment to let you know if it was not possible ahead of time. And not possible will be, now I told you I was at a place where 47% on-time delivery, which is a disaster. So the schedule itself is so unstable. How can you make any plans around it? But we did. But I was responsible for setting up the infrastructure, and I had to deal with that. I had to deal with people were working overtime. They wanted to get home. They felt pressure all the time, operators and supervisors. But the methodology is extraordinarily reliable, but more than reliable, it creates an environment where people own their own thinking, and they're allowed to do this. I just did a session for a group in the United Arab Emirates. I just did this on Monday. So it'll be on our YouTube channel, I don't know, in a week or so or something like that. But it maps out what happens in the training room to build this ownership. What are the trainer behaviors that will allow this ignition? Because what we're talking about is the human will, not the human want, but they're very closely allied, but the human will. So the job here is to make the outcome extremely appealing and to work it. With Visuality, it's pretty much unobstructed. I've never, and I've been working at this a long time, worked with a group that hasn't come alive and become dynamic and animated about turning their workplaces visual or turning the schedule into a visual schedule. So it's a little bit of a tricky question, and I don't want to sound, glad-handed or cavalier about it, but this is the truth of it. I swear on the head of my cat, even my mother. This is the way. So the ownership is very, very important. And so that means you have to address that which says no in people right from the beginning. But the infrastructure still goes into place. So you get, for example, right here, improvement time. We might have time, I doubt it, but we might have time to talk about this at the end. I promise you that we will do it in the workshop, though. But it has to do with the company needs to set aside X amount of time per week, per person in the targeted areas, the areas that are part of the training cycle. It can be 15 minutes a week to do your own inventiveness, your own exploration, or it can be an hour. In some cases, it's 2 hours. And you know what's so interesting about that? So you have the ranking side executive creates a policy, we give a template, and puts his name on it. And if there are a lot of supervisors, sometimes all the supervisors sign on, even though they're very skeptical. She puts her name on it, and all we ask her to do is to say, We want one of you supervisors to volunteer to experiment, to pilot this in your area. We're putting the infrastructure in place. The proposal has been accepted. The contract's been signed. We received the payment. And they've pledged to improvement time. How many ways can you say, no, I don't have time? So the ranking side executive, because that point is reached very quickly, hey, nobody's using any improvement time, because the supervisors are in charge of the faucet and they won't put it on. They won't turn the faucet on because we already have an unstable schedule. How can I give up time for this frivolous play thing, this art therapy? This is what I've heard, I'm quoting, oh, art therapy. I know what that looks like. And so we have the champion. This ranking side executive says, look, guys, I just want one volunteer to find 1 hour next week and release it. You can divide it into 4 parts, or you can give it to one person, but I just want one person. This is exactly the way it happens too. When you hit the resistance, you say 1 hour. Hey, I'm going out he's talking to his direct report. She's talking to everyone. There's 15 people in the room, all the supervisors. I'm going out to find a Pepsi. It's going to take me a while. When I come back, I want to volunteer. So comes back, one person volunteers, but another 6 are going to try it out anyway in secret. And you know what happens when they try it out? When this one person releases the hour, the operators won't accept it. Oh, they didn't expect that. They thought that people would say, oh, I want it. But no, operators say, I'm not going to touch that. That's a trap. They never give you any extra time for anything around here. I'm not going to walk into that. What, do I look stupid? I got very good genes in my brain. I'm not going to do it. Nobody takes so now the supervisors have to sell the supervisor. The one has to sell the idea and say, no, I really mean it. You won't be punished. Do you see what I mean? So that's the way you work the infrastructure. You don't take either one of those things as a defeat. You take it as learning. It is a new idea. It's a radical idea. We're going to do it anyway, and I'll just wait. And we wait, and then somebody says, I'll try it out. Because that person has been in the training room and is alive with ideas and wants time to get what's inside out. So you have a great friend in this internal power of the will, and it slowly aligns. It takes a while. It's okay. In a little while, I want to treat this for trainers. So we're going to go on, okay? Yeah. Thank you for the great question. Of course, it's very rich. So let's look at this 3-legged stool, on-site leadership. This is just a way to talk about your baby OPEX function, your baby CI office, the coordinator of the visual workplace. The seat of the stool and the 3 legs are there to support the seat of the stool are your targeted areas, the areas who are going through the training cycle. The first leg of the stool is the management champion, the advocate, the person who said, hey, I'm going for a Pepsi. I want you guys to find it. Do me this favor, please. I promised Gwendolyn, and she's from New York City, and I just don't want her on my back. She gets a little bit fierce. Come on, do me, whatever the ploy is. Management champion. The middle leg is the coordinator. Now, this is really the project manager who takes on the logistics, the scheduling, and takes on with me the success of the first cycle. Me and that coordinator are responsible for the success of the first cycle. Can't do it alone. So he or she chooses a lead team, is not given a lead team, chooses them carefully. And the definition, the informal definition is these people have to love you. Okay, don't put any rivals on this lead team. It's too early. Just get people who support you, who sing your song, and who will give up their lunch to go out and buy something that's missing, or who will look after. And I'll show you an example right now. So this is Hitchcock Industries. aluminum castings for the aerospace industry. This is the coordinator. His name is Mike Suki. He's also the head of engineering, so he's got no extra time. This is what the workplace looked like. Wonderful hearts and minds, but man, it was full of problems. This is the lead team, a little larger than usual, these 7, with Suki there, okay? And these are all supervisors or the training manager whom you see in Melanie, okay? She was learning, she was shadowing me, and man, she was great. And this is the son of the owner, very enthusiastically there. And what these people did and why they're wearing this vest, which I will show you in a moment, they're wearing this vest because they wanted to be noticed, because their job was to go into a designated work area, which was not their own. They couldn't be the supervisor and walk through twice a day, every day, with this beautiful vest that on the back said, "How may I help you?" They got this right from Kmart. How may I? They put on their vest, they go through every day reliably, 8:30 to 9 o'clock or 8:30 to 8:45. Just walk through. Can I get you anything you need? Hey, I got that drawing for you. You have an appointment with the engineer on Thursday, George, okay? Just going through. And just a presence, that's all they're doing. That's the lead team. And they're picking up word on the street. They're finding out how things are going. This is real time. I didn't call it a Gemba walk. They're not after anything except whatever sticks and whatever they see. And they bring it back to Suki. They bring it back because he doesn't have any time. He needs eyes. You be my eyes. And then they talk about it. Along with that, later on, we establish what's called a steering team. You can change these words any way you like, exchange them, call them what you want. Tigers and lions and elephants. It's okay, whatever you like. And this function is made up of associates who volunteer. They love Visuality. They're your big contributors. Once or twice you can go on my website and find the video about the steering team, and you'll see that one of the guys on there, this great guy, he said, "I'm here to represent all the grumpy people." And he was so miserable. He represented all the grumpy people. But here we have a happy group of 4 or 5 people. The lady in red is the trainer. She was invited. I don't want to go into too much detail. And here they are 3 years later. They had to expand it because nobody would give up their seat. And people began to support. So this is the 3-legged stool. We put this in place. I'm going to move on because I'm getting into too much detail. And now more and more, especially since we've done the online system for operator-led Visuality, there's the trainer. The trainer becomes the 4th leg of the stool. In this case, it was Melanie. There she is. And there's Annie. Okay. So those are the people who they care, they want to protect, and they're learning about, in this case, operator-led Visuality intimately. And you can feel the strength in that. You don't force it. It comes from the authority of Suki. It comes from the authority, in this case here, of Bruce Hamilton, who was the management champion for this rollout in United Electric, my very, very first one, 1993 or 4. Long stories, many beers. We can talk about it when I get to Finland. But, people come together. They want to come together. And the infrastructure provides them with a way to talk about something that they have in common. And you could summarize that thing they have in common as success. They want to be successful. They like the way it feels. They like their reduction in distance and in time. They like the reliability of a method that is visual. They like the strength in that. They have control over their corner of the world, etc., etc. We don't have to persuade this. People, they might be hesitant at first, but it's the start that stops us. So we just say, it's okay, you can be hesitant. Lots of stories about that as well. Okay, so the 3-legged stool is an important part of these requirements, and you just work it. You need to have someone who is logistically in charge. Okay, we're going to take some more questions, but let me move on. Juha, just give me a moment and I'll go through the laminated map, because the laminated map, this is the hidden factor here is we're going to talk about the trainer through the laminated map, but the map is used to keep track of how things are going in your company. You divide it up you put a boundary around the whole thing and then divide it up into its logical functional areas, its departments. You put a blue dot in every one of those. Blue means we're not going to get started yet. You'll see this here. We're not going to commit to implement here yet. And red means simply we've started. And then you set up the criteria. This is criteria for operator-led visuality. It actually has changed a little bit. But here's the criteria of what green means, okay? And we begin to choose areas. Okay, we're in our second cycle. I'm not sure what happened to the first cycle. I must have left out a map. But this is a very complex area. It's 30 screw machines, Acme Gridleys. This is just an area for chip processing. And so it's a pretty low productivity area. This is the highest productivity area in the place. And it went green first because the guys really, a bunch of guys in here, and they wanted the resources. They were totally alive with visuality. And here's the second cycle. Okay, and they go, and there's chip processing went green. So we're going through this. So that's its purpose. Its purpose is to give us an easy way to keep track of the progress. So we're not running around wondering, are we there yet? But for our purposes, I want to talk to you, and these are the last 3 or 4 slides, about what the map does for the trainer. I do the first cycle. You can put 55 people in the room, all speaking Dutch, which is, I said, maximum 30. There were 55 the day I launched at Nautobomb Trailers. I said 30. What don't you understand about 30? There were 55 Dutchmen. They were all men. If you've been around the Dutch, you know they eat a lot of cheese. They're very, very healthy. But the trainer has to take over after my cycle. It's called the A cycle. And here's the point. When your trainers launch the training cycle that's theirs, the first cycle is strictly for their own learning. You do this so that they will have a very low bar of success. They can make all the mistakes they do make. And, you know, maybe people have to go to therapy as a result. They make a lot of mistakes. When they say a lot of, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Can I try it again? And they'll say it in front of a group. So you don't begin with the Acme Gridley when it's your first training cycle, right? You begin nice and low key over here in shipping, if that's shipping. That's your A cycle. Make your mistakes. You're already forgiven. It's just an error. It's not a sin. And the B cycle. The C cycle, and look, finally, D cycle will take on Acme Gridley. Okay, it's like that. So I wanted to share those things with you because I want the idea of startup requirements. I want you to feel the steadiness and the structure of methodology plus deployment tactics that are very prescribed. Let's take some more questions. Go ahead, please.
All right. Yes.
Thank you.
Just a moment. Yeah. Could you please say more about how to qualify a methodology?
Yes, it's a complex question because methodology could be anything. But what I look for is I want to know which waste it's going to attack. So this is the first thing I look for is, okay, can I specifically name the wastes that are going to be attacked by this methodology? Secondly, are the training materials of good quality? Do they both share the content and begin to create society amongst the people being trained? Does the methodology build community? This is actually a term that I picked up from Zumba. I was looking for a place to do Zumba when I was living in Oregon. And I asked the lady, how do you qualify your instructors? And she said, you know, the first thing I look for is, can they build community? And I thought, build community for Zumba 45 minutes a week? But in fact, when I began with them, I felt that I was dancing with people instead of just going through an exercise routine. And that became part of my kind of description of building community. So I look for that building community. I look for how results are tracked, what the metric is, and if there is a correlated or a below the horizon metric for cultural health. So I look for those things, and then I watch it. I want to check references for clients who say, we rolled over and took it the second cycle, or maybe they did it on the third cycle. I want to hear that the methodology builds self-sufficiency. If not, excuse me, I'm going to say something very naughty, that consultant is just after our money. If they don't actually have as an outcome that they teach us what they know, I don't want to mess with them, because they can sparkle all they like, but I'm not going to have them forever. I have you forever. And I want you to learn, and I want you to reach those outcomes. So I look for those four things. Do you see what I'm saying? Thank you for the good question.
Thank you.
I rarely get that question. Go ahead,
Any
please.
suggestions about how to convince my boss that an infrastructure is needed?
Yeah. I offer, just make an appointment with us and we'll talk. I don't know what your boss is like, but I offer that to anyone who's listening. If you want me to talk to your boss about infrastructure, I'm happy to do that. If you can get him on the phone, that will be the first victory. Unless you've lived infrastructure, it's really hard to convince anybody of its importance. But you can talk about the I-beams and the plumbing and say, we need to have something in place that will be our insurance, that we will recover from the mistakes that we make or any setbacks, that we already have that kind of, what's it called in the United States? I think it's FEMA team. The emergency response system is already built in. It doesn't work that well in the United States, but I'm sure it does here in Europe. But that kind of thing, you prepare ahead of time. It's a little bit tricky. Thank you for your good question. I didn't give you a good answer. Thank you.
Do you think supervisors can make good trainers? Do they need any special preparation?
Many supervisors become good trainers, but they have to be relieved of some percentage of their supervisory duties. They can't do both. They can't keep up the kind of responsiveness you need to expedite logistics, expedite the schedule, do all kinds of troubleshooting, and still have the regularized time to stay connected with a group. So if you can really give your supervisor a 30% relief, maybe what you would do is have an intern supervisor working with that veteran supervisor, and the veteran supervisor gets 30% relief for the new supervisor to just be on his or her own. You can do it like that. Training for a supervisor who wants it is very seductive and very delicious and very satisfying, because she gets to create the change she's always wanted. How good is that? It is a worthy goal. I would encourage you, but be careful. The main culprit here is not enough time, and supervisors are already under so much pressure that you mustn't lure them in because they want it and then make them compromise their health, their mental health, their physical health, their family health. Be careful with that. Be careful. We have had wonderful coordinators who have been supervisors. It's more of a desk job, a kind of keeping things in order job, but it's very hard to be a coordinator and a trainer, although we've had that a number of times. I'm thinking of Liz Beth. She was an extraordinary, she was promoted to vice president. She got so good at her job.
All right.
So all of that works. You just have to kind of be careful.
Good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please say more about the improvement time? Are you saying it is an actual metric?
It is indeed. Thank you. It's a great question. And I actually put this in here because I thought if we have extra time. So let me just say a few things. We call it Resolve at the top. It's a written policy, and you can find a template for this under the members area on my website. It's free. Just go in there and look under probably files, and you'll find the templates for all of these templates that you see. But it's a written policy, and it's tracked. So it's a document that's drafted by the ranking site executive, and it demonstrates, puts into words, that a specific amount of time will be released per person each week. And it's a demonstration of the company's commitment to making systematic improvement a way of life, a daily habit. That's what it stands for. Without a policy, there's a real danger that improvement, systematic improvement, will never happen. Okay, here's one that was signed. Angie put this together, not her real name, not her real last name, but all of her direct reports signed it. Okay, so you can look at this on the website. You can download the documents and try it out. It's fantastic. And it says here, use improvement time during normal business hours, although some companies, especially the smaller ones, will say you can come in on Saturday or you can stay late on Friday, because they realize that they still have production to get through. I'm sorry, somebody's emptying the garbage across the street, if you're hearing that, and breaking a lot of bottles while they're doing it. It also says, don't combine improvement time with prep time or daily cleanups or breaks or anything. Track your improvement time on the form, which I'll show you in a moment, and hand it in to your supervisor or the coordinator weekly. And sometimes when the trust was not enough in a company, they could just leave their improvement time, this tracking sheet you'll see now, this tracking sheet, they wouldn't go up to a board and write their time. They would have their individual improvement sheet like this, one person for each sheet, and then just drop it off when no one was looking. That's already a victory, just to get people to confess that they've used in time that was not for production. But this is interesting. You know, this is the way it is. People, when you read the rules and you're in a position of authority, it feels like, you know, there'll be punishment if you deviate. I think that day and age is almost gone, but something else has taken its place. And I'll be talking about that at your conference, Juha, when we talk about visuality in turbulent times. There really is an authority crisis. We see it prominently in the United States. We see it in Germany. And so people are feeling really grumpy. So here you are. I'll just move through this, and you stop me anytime you like to say goodbye. But if folks want to stay, I'm happy to walk through this. So this is made out in the hand of the person. You don't go around and collect the information. You are not allowed to do that. That is considered a criminal act, not a sin, but a criminal act. You may not get time from people. They have to do it voluntarily. That's your demonstration that they're getting on board. We've had lots of cases where people will use their improvement time for months, and they will never confess it. They will never tell you. And they'll start producing these glorious visual devices and visual systems. And you go up to them and you say, Larry, you want to say how much time? You know, you just say it casually. And he says, no, that's it. Okay, thanks. Excuse me for asking. I know I'm not supposed to ask you, but you leave it alone. He's already doing the work. He doesn't want to be public about it. But here we are. You got 15 minutes in. Paul got his full hour in. George did this on Monday morning at 6:30 when he got into the factory. He put a 0 and then he left us a love note. It's a pain. Rich got his hour like this. His machine was down. He worked for 45 minutes. Brenda did this, and look at what, this is such a great story. This is what Claude did on Monday. And on Monday, he used up all of his time, and he saw George isn't going to use any of it. And he went over to George. He told me about this later. He said, I went over to George. I said, hey, George, I see you're not planning to use your time. Can I have it? So innocent. And George said, no. It's mine. Okay, so whatever, you get the culture. This is an extraordinary, get 4 hours out of a potential 6. Fantastic, things are working well. So that just kind of took you through it. And now we track it. But we also say, supervisor, you're in charge of the faucet. You cannot take that leverage away from him. And so you say, just decide on a time and let people sign up for it. I can't do it this week, but next week, 3 hours. I commit to that, says the supervisor. Sign up, first come, first serve. And it happens like this. So we find workarounds. That's part of operationalizing the infrastructure. We're still getting improvement time. It's fantastic. And this is unimportant to read. But it says we prepare a report for the guy who signed, the woman who signed the policy. So we collect the metrics. These forms are also there. I think they may be editable. We may have put, so you could just use them. You can see, look, piston and shoe, 83%. This is where Larry worked. 31%, 138%. You just sneak it in if you can. Your machine is down. You go over it, right? Fantastic. And then we get a trend chart. And this goes to the ranking side executive, the one who signed the policy. And she starts asking why. Let me see if I got the right slide next. Why did it go up? Why did it go down? Why did it go up? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? So there's this wonderful partnership between senior, shop floor, operators, supervisors, and time is the metric. You can divide your time also, classroom training, individual improvement time, blitzes, a macro blitz, which is the department shuts down, a mini blitz, which is just a couple of people work on their thing. So there's all kinds of ways. It's really important. And it's so interesting. One of my last big assignments where we did this big from 47 to 99% on time delivery, Miguel was in charge of, he was a GM, he had 5 plants. And he said, I want to make improvement time. I don't think I have this here. I don't think I can find it in time. I want to make improvement time one of our macro metrics. I want lead time and our utilization of time to be one of our macro metrics. And he put it right in his vision statement. If you give me a half a moment, I just have to go to 2021. Here, we'll find it. Pretty sure we'll find it here. And I'll just show you this beautiful, we call it the OSIT, the Operation Systems Improvement Template, which is, are you going to open for me? Yeah, it's opening. It's an executive tool. Don't take your time. Come on, we're waiting. What's wrong with you? Don't you see all these people?
while you're waiting for that to open, then we are just out of our time also.
Yes.
But we can, maybe just take one more question. And,
yes, but let me just show you this. It's opening now. And I want to say to you, one of the reasons why we did these webinars is so that you could see the quality of what is going to be taught at the workshop. This workshop is important to Peter and Juha. They are, in a way, taking a chance, inviting me to come in. And I said, this is really good stuff. I think it can help a lot of people. And one of you came up with it. Well, let's show them in advance what it is. So we will not be going into improvement time unless it specifically comes up. But this is the quality of the thinking. I've been in this, this is going to sound terrible, but I'm an expert in this field. This is my field. This is what I've been doing since 1984, before you've been born. So I'm really good at this, Come to the workshop and learn more. Visuality is so much more than you think it is. This happens to be.
Just to mention that we'll keep the raffle on to Tuesday noon Finnish time. So please send us questions. And Gwendolyn is able to answer them. The questions in the workshop, and one of you who presented the questions will be getting a free ticket, free seat to the
and then we'll have more raffles where I'm raffling off I think 6 months to my online system and a consulting day, and we want to make a party. We want you to come to the party. We'll have fun.
Very good.
Yeah. So you can, I'm sorry, it's actually further down on his kind of house, but here you'll see it. This is a man, I just want to make this point. This is a man who worked on the executive level with me and was doing the X-type matrix incorrectly and wasn't getting any mileage out of it. And I said, Miguel, do you want to do this thing? And I was amazed on the first time that we had our meeting that I'd never seen the word love on a mission statement before. And
Gwendolyn,
I said,
we are seeing the slide 50 resolve at the top.
You are seeing slide 50. That means I'm not showing you the right. Okay, I've got it. I've got it right here.
We need more visuality.
I got it. We need more visuality. Okay, so there it is.
Yes, there it is.
Yeah, okay. So there's love. And I took somebody aside and I said, is that, because it said amor in something like amor. I said, is that the word love? And he said, yeah, that's it. But look, this is his mission statement. Listen to this. He would not do his OSIT because he said, you know what? We're the Mexican people and we have been exploited by the world for our entire existence in the last 2 centuries. And I will not represent greed. I will not get, that thing that you said about pay me. You don't pay me for thinking, let me do my work. I will not entice my people to work harder for greed. It took it, and I said, okay, Miguel, make it right for you. And he said this, listen to this. We are a people-centered, high-performance organization. We are people in a community more than employees. People have a common purpose in life, well-being. Work is part of life and a big contribution achieving its purpose. Sorry for the typo. The purpose of excellence. This is where he said, I don't want to ask people to be excellent if we're just going to make them work harder. So he worked this out. These are his words. The purpose of excellence is inherently human and a powerful generator of well-being. And here we got time. Achieving all of the above is dependent on how we use our time. And you'll see this later on. So this was such congruence. Okay, we'll take your last question. Thank you. Go ahead, please. Thank you for allowing me to do that. It really does my heart good. I'll show you. Go ahead. Ask me your last question, please. Is there one?
Will there be more?
This is Miguel. This is Miguel right here.
Yeah.
We used to call him Mr. Wonderful. He was just such a fine person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will there be more webinars?
Oh, we would love to. Ask Peter and Juha. We can do webinars until the cows come home. Believe me, I got a lot of material. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, everybody.
And actually, I'd say that is very much connected to the questions because, as you've understood, Gwendolyn has an infinite quantity of knowledge to share. So it depends on what questions comes in about the workshop, about future webinars and whatever.
That would be so interesting. We could do a series based on those questions. Let's see if that works. I'm for it. Thank you very much.
And there's time till 12 o'clock noon Finnish time on Tuesday. So send them in. I'll put my email on the chat, and also we'll send an email to you with the recording. So you have my email then.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Juha.
Thank you very much, Gwendolyn.
It's such a pleasure. Bye, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. I'll call you, Juha.
Yes.
Okay.
Do that.
Just a moment. Mhm.
Yes.
Let's stop the recorder.